All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to some Stormworks Build and Rescue. In today's video, it's just going to be a quick update video about our build, our rocket ship here, and I'm just going to go over some changes I've made, and some things that I've learned. So, in the last update, I said I was trying to balance the rocket, and I was trying to balance it with all this weight that I added to the base. I have since removed all that weight. I was able to reduce the engines from 16 to 8, but I can't go any lower than this. For a rocket this size, that seems to be the minimum. I'm right at my capacity for a single for 4. So with the 8, I'm able to launch pretty much almost to the moon. So to keep the top of the rocket stable, I tried these RCS thrusters, and they don't work at all. The craft is just far too large to try and use air in space to move it around. You have to have these small jet engines, unfortunately. Similarly, when you're launching, you need the small jet engine. So what I've done on the top of the, I should move these. So I have 2 tilt sensors. We're gonna move them right now here. They should be center. There it is. Right? Because we're slightly off center. So anyways, these control the thrusters on the top of your spaceship, right? So if it tilts this way, it's +1. If it tilts this way, it's -1. So when it tilts this way at +1, those thrusters turn on, and it shoots the rocket that way. When it turns -1, these rockets turn on, and it shoots the rocket that way. Alternatively, when it goes past 0, these rockets turn off, and these rockets turn off. So that's how I was able to stabilize the rocket. It's as easy as that. So as soon as I was able to stabilize it, I started to reduce the weight, and I started to reduce the engine size. Right? I was able to go from 16, which I needed to cut through the atmosphere. I didn't necessarily need that for space, but I needed it for atmospheric stability. So yeah. We'll just paste that there. Perfect. And we'll merge that. Now that is the center. Now we're on the center of the spacecraft. All right, so that controls these thrusters. So moving forward, what I need to do is I need to take these thrusters, and I need to put 4 along the bottom for when we're in space. Because once we're in space, these only maneuver the nose of the spacecraft, and that's it. Right? So you don't have your ability to turn and maneuver in space is greatly reduced. Long story short. So what I need to do is I need to take these, and I need to add them down to the base of the spaceship, and then we'll be able to move easily in space. So that's kind of where I'm going next. Also, I got very lucky. I took a guess when I made these original pods, these fuel pods. And if you noticed in the earlier videos, I was launching without any gauges. I only recently put the gauges in and started looking at which we'll do a launch here. I'll show you. We'll do a launch here. Maybe that's the best thing. But I wasn't using I didn't have any dials, any gauges. I was launching to space, and I was estimating using that without even putting the astral sensor in here. So I didn't even know how high I was going, right? I didn't have an altimeter or nothing. So if you follow the tutorial where we make this, the base engines, I haven't changed anything as far as the tank capacity goes. So the tanks, there's 3 tanks per engine, 6 tanks per engine, 3 for oxygen and 3 for hydrogen. And it's still the same throughout the entire spaceship. So when it comes to these small thrusters, I'm now at this point in time able to start to calculate the consumption values, right? So in the other video, I did say that it drains the tanks equally. I've debunked that theory. I've debunked it. I took a single tank and I connected it to one of my large jet engines, and then I have our 3 tanks connected, and I compared the two. There's a huge difference. A huge difference. Now, because I wasn't able to get a clear, it was greater than 3-to-1, if that makes sense, right? You would think 3 tanks. Okay, I drained the first tank while we were launching to space, and I had burned through, let's see, less than a quarter of a tank, maybe 3/16 in the time that I had burnt through the entire first tank. So that's a huge difference. I don't know how to calculate that. I'm not that smart. I don't know how you would calculate the math to get your fuel efficiency, but it does seem, the next theory that I would need to test is chaining the tanks together, because I had said that it doesn't matter if you chain 100 tanks or 1 tank, it drains them the same. That's not the case. If you chain them all together because of pressure, it just seems like there's something different going on. Like I say, I'm not that smart. But that's just some food for thought. If you're that smart and you think you can go there and you think you can calculate it, those are basically where I'm at. I'm trying to calculate fuel efficiency for the engines. Now, where I say I got super lucky, the first pod will launch from the Earth and get us to space, almost to the moon. It'll get us like 500,000 units away from the Earth. So that tells me the second pod I'm going to have enough in the second pod to launch from the moon to get back to the Earth. So this thing can go and return. The final pod is navigation. There's just enough to keep these thrusters on automatic mode when you launch from Earth. I haven't tested the moon. Obviously, there's lower gravity. It's easier to go back to the Earth. But I imagine we're still going to use a lot of fuel from here. So this pod is also taken up. So I basically run right out of fuel. And it's like right down to the wire. And that's why I said I got super duper lucky, because I estimated based off nothing. I took a guess. I built these pods. And that's where we got to. And I'm actually incredibly, incredibly happy that we were able to get this route. So if you're following the first tutorial, going full circle here, the way I made that first rocket engine works. Okay, and if you make it small, like the small one that I had, which we're gonna do after this big one, we're gonna build some smaller ones with some more stuff on it. You'll see it doesn't take much to get to the moon. But this is what you want the tank set up. So yeah, this ship here is our main base. It'll go and land on the moon. It'll use all its fuel. It'll still have a little bit left, obviously, to launch. And then we're going to launch these pods. Okay, the pods are going to be like a hospital, a resource station. Ones could be maybe a crane. And then we're going to need a truck. And we're probably going to need some land vehicles, right? And then maybe a helicopter pad. So stuff like that. That would basically be all of that. So we'll launch. And what I'm doing now is I'm adding additional fuel pods, because we need 12 per engine. That's how we're calculating it out. 12 gets one of these engines from Earth to space. So each one of these engines needs 12 of these to get from Earth to space. So yeah, so what I'm testing now is to see what additional capacity I have. How much more fuel can I add to this thing before it really starts to drag down? Like I say, if I just let it go till it burns, till these engines burn out, I'm incredibly close to the moon. So if I have a little bit more capacity that I can use while I'm in space for positioning, and a little bit more capacity that I can use for thrust, I'll easily be able to shoot to the moon from where I'm at. That's the plan. That's the theory. That's where we're at. So let's give this thing a launch, You'll see what I mean about stability. I have a single microcontroller in this build so far. That's it. And what the microcontroller does is it takes the positive and negative values from the tilt sensors, and it says engine turn on, engine turn off. That's it. This here are the valves. I put valves for these engines. I don't know, it wasn't planned. I thought maybe it works. So when you turn on launch mode, they're active. That's the light, and then that's the main engines. And that's it. So we can go into first-person mode now. Remember, I couldn't fly in first-person mode because the rocket would shoot all over the place. And we're able to see there's the gas, our engine. There's our altitude. And this says moon, but it's actually the distance from the Earth to where we are, coming from the astronomy sensor. So that's it. That's it. I'm not doing anything. Right? Because we have the center of the spaceship. And it'll go all the way to the moon like this, almost all the way to the moon. So yeah. And now that it's automatic, the rockets are keeping the top of the rocket centered as we launch, right? It's incredible. And that's it. That's all you have to do. On a small rocket or a big rocket. A small rocket, you might be able to use air. A big rocket like this, you have to use these thrusters. Just because of the weight. I mean, it makes sense with the weight, right? So now that I made it stable, I was able to put the dials in to see what our consumption is. Now this is gas. This is our first set of tanks. And this is our second set of tanks. And then this green light, there's a threshold gate down there and a valves. And when this gets to 1500, it opens up the second tank. And why 1500? Well, as the gas in the tank gets lower, the pressure in the tank gets lower, and we start to slow down a little bit. So I figured at 1500, there's still enough pressure in the system that you can open up the next tank, and you don't lose very much for momentum. Now you'll see we're only 17,000 is our altitude, and we've consumed, almost 50% of one entire fuel pod just leaving the Earth. Right? We're at 40. However, you'll notice that it doesn't take much. It'll take another 500 or so before we see. Now we start to speed up. Now we're escaping the Earth's gravity and we're speeding up. As you can see, this tank is still consuming, but very slow. And we've only burned about 300 units of fuel, and we've climbed 15,000 feet. What a difference, huh? So now we're into space, and the moon's right there. So now what you could do is you could turn off launch mode and manually burn manually burn to the moon. There, let's just like that. There we go. So now what I need is just some additional fuel. For navigation. Right now, we're pretty much pointed right at the moon. And you'll see that these tanks still have quite a bit of thrust in them. This is our distance away. Look, we're shooting through space. But you need lots of fuel. Need lots of fuel here for these little engines. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing now is I'm crunching the numbers finally, getting the fuel calculations going to see what we need to do to get to the moon. As I obviously overshot it. Now there's 2 more sensors that come out of the astronomy sensor, which I'll have to play with, which are supposed to give you your, I don't know what it is, your trajectory to the moon based on those points. Based on your X and Z. This way and this way. So as you can see, obviously, my trajectory is very bad. Yeah, so now these engines are pretty much low. So what I would do is I would stop and I would have to switch over. But you see how much thrust that got us? So in space, I could dial those engines back and maybe that'll give us some more forward momentum. I mean, this might almost be too much. Like, it's this part now, right? This is where we're at. How do we triangulate the moon from where we are without overshooting it? Because I obviously overshot it. Right. So if I can carry the additional fuel, I can still use these ones because they're, I don't even think I'm into the second tank yet, but I have to see. One of these fuel cells isn't connected properly, and I think that's the one I'm using for readings, so I'll have to test that out. Anyhow, thanks for watching. This was just a, just wanted to give an update just to show where I'm at and what the next what the next steps are for the space program to get us to the moon. Clearly we can overshoot it, which is fantastic, but with a little bit more fuel, I feel like we can align in space to the moon and just shoot into it, even if we crash on the dark side of the moon. That would be cool. We could set our base up with lights and everything. We'd need nuclear power for that. Yeah, there's the Earth way down there. So it does it. It does it. Now these pods, right, if we wanted to, they could be, we could slow down the ship. We could put thrusters on it that slow it down. Here, you'll see here, this is our distance away from the Earth. See, it's just going crazy. So we could put thrusters on here that slow us down. If we could slow that down to 0, we'll be stopped in space. Then we can leave, and you can not walk around, but you can float around inside the chamber, and you're not going to lose the spaceship and be tossed around. And then these pods could be launchable things, satellites, or they could even be rockets that actually go down to the surface of the moon. This could be like a mothership. Now, I'm just giving ideas out there for creations that you can build, but this is just the basics. These are the basics. So if you can see here, where the split is, that's one from the base of the two rockets to the first split in the blocks right there. That's one fuel cell. That's one whole cell. That's what it takes to get that rocket from the Earth to here with all this additional weight. I'm sure if we took off a lot of this weight, we might be able to burn right to the moon with it. I'm not sure. But that represents 24 tanks. 12 tanks of hydrogen and 12 tanks of oxygen. So if I, was a lot smarter and didn't confuse myself, like, this is the first time I ever built a spaceship, right? So once you build it, you kind of have an idea of how to do it better the next time. I have a way better idea, an easier idea of how I would, after spending 2 days doing pipes, I have a way easier way of piping the whole thing together. So maybe what I'll do is I'll put up a tutorial. I know in the build mode it gets really laggy. But maybe I'll put up a quick tutorial about chaining the pipes together and just sort of theory to make your builds easier. But anyways, thanks for watching. That was it. This is just a quick update. It does make it to space. We show you how to use the thrusters for alignment. And the next step will be tilting us in space and launching straight at the moon. Ooh, exciting. And then crashing into the moon and see if we could set up this base. All right, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day. Thanks for liking. Bye for now.